what you began to discover about what was, I don't want to say it for you, what was in the whole COVID shots? Because I heard you do a whole thing on that. I didn't know if you were planning on doing that, but what they've discovered from Venom.
Absolutely. All right. So this is a great point.
Yeah.
So this is kind of hard to dive into, but I would like to just relay to the audiences what you're about to hear if you've never heard this before, which is fine. I've done thousands of interviews all over the world, actually. But I want you to be aware that you were all lied to. You were told that a bat coughed in China and made the whole world sick. Then you were told maybe it came out of a lab in China and made the whole world sick. There was just a spillover, an accidental spillover on some innocent worker. Then you were told that seafood made you sick in Wuhan, and those people left there and somehow coughed on everybody else their shrimp they ate and then spread COVID that way. Then they blamed it on pangolins, which is an animal you've never seen in your whole life if you live in America. You have to go look it up. You know what the CDC just said 4 months ago, Steve? They just published 4 months ago that they believe they have determined what was the actual origin source of COVID.
What's that?
And they said it's a raccoon dog.
Oh, what? I didn't even, is that a real thing?
I had to look it up because they don't exist in America. Like, where the hell is that dog? So I had to go look it up. Where are you making up these animals that are the cause of this thing? And just so you know, this is typical behavior by humans. They always want to point the blame at someone who can't defend themselves.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't us. It was that dog. It was that bat. It was that pangolin. It was that seafood market. It had nothing to do with the governments that are actually all lying to you and creating these biological weapons, making you sick. And we're calling it a virus. I mean, this is child's play, personally. Every child on earth, any of us that have siblings, you know, if you've got busted by your parents when you were a kid, at some point you tried to blame it on your siblings. You still got busted.
Yeah, almost always, right?
That wasn't me, Mom and Dad, with all the chocolate chips on your face. I didn't steal the cookie. It was my sister.
He made me do it. Anyway.
He made me do it. This is exactly what they're doing with the bird flu, West Nile virus, and insects, what they're doing with equine viruses, what they're doing with monkeypox. They have found if they can blame it on anything else but them, you'll fall for it. So all of you were lied to. But the truth is, there was no bat virus that was coughed on the whole world. That isn't what was happening. There was these things that science was publishing in the first year of COVID that they were saying actually was the cause for all symptoms you had felt and was being reported, called COVID-19 symptoms. Loss of taste, loss of smell, ringing in your ears, brain fog, fever, cough, low oxygen levels with your pulse oximeter that you could watch in your home. They were showing you all these symptoms. What you don't know is that the NIH published in May of 2023 a document titled, "What are these spike proteins of COVID?" These little proteins that made everybody sick that they said was on the outside of the virus, never been there before. This was engineered in a lab 100% to make you sick. But they published what these little proteins that created all the symptoms called COVID were identical to. And you can look up the study. It states, and I put it in my book, it states the spike proteins of COVID that are making people die, making people sick, making them lose their taste and smell, creating myocarditis, what they are identical to are these 3 things: rabies virus, HIV virus, and snake venom neurotoxins. That's right out of their published document. So I want to stick on this for a minute because all of you thought it had anything to do with bats. Well, HIV, what does that have to do with bats if that's on the outside of the virus? I mean, I was told years ago that people were having sex with monkeys in Africa, and that's how HIV started. So where did the bat narrative come from? And then rabies, they do talk about rabies and bats. And, you know, they do talk about that. There could be a rabied bat somewhere in a house and can maybe bite somebody and get rabies, or your dogs. You know what's crazy about all that? Did you know that the rabies virus, if you look up research studies, they actually published that on the outside of the rabies virus is another spike protein, like they said with the COVID virus, that's called RGP for short. It stands for rabies glycoprotein. In every research study, anybody who's actually an expert on rabies, they publish that this little protein on the outside of the rabies virus that they've known for decades, they publish for decades, it's identical to snake venom neurotoxins.
Does that mean, when you say it's identical, do you mean it's the same thing?
Exactly
or
right.
Is it a lot like it? Or just, you're saying identical?
Yeah, they actually use the word homologous. Homologous means identical to in its structure and in its behavior. So let me go a little bit further. They actually say that HIV's virus has on the outside of it another spike protein, just like the rabies virus and the COVID virus, and it's called GP120, glycoprotein 120. Do you know what they publish about that virus's spike protein since Anthony Fauci declared HIV 40 years ago a pandemic? They published that spike protein that makes people eventually develop AIDS is also homologous and identical to snake venom neurotoxins. All right, so now, Steve, you can do this. You can actually type in Google right now. Look up what are the origin animals of COVID. You can type in what are the origins of COVID animals, January 2020. And the first thing that's going to pull up is a CNN article, and it says the origin of COVID-19 was two snakes, the king cobra and the Chinese crate snake.
It's openly, you can Google that now?
You can Google
I
it.
won't do it because I might lose the connection, but I'll take your word for it.
It's also in my book, just so you know. I highlight all those in there because in the first 4 months of COVID-19, every newscast was publishing that COVID-19 was caused by snake venom proteins. And then fact checkers go in and start fact checking these stories and slanting them back to a bat virus. Now, this is why this is so important. The only thing that answers every symptom caused by COVID-19 that is now by our government termed long COVID-19, long haulers, and every vaccine injury caused by the COVID-19 vaccines, including death and miscarriages. Do you know there's only one thing on earth that's published to do 100% of all those things in a human? By science. The only thing that answers 100% of all those symptoms is snake venom poisoning.
Unbelievable.
In fact, y'all might be shocked to find out that in February of 2020, there was a published article in the Wall Street Journal titled "The Naming of the Pandemic is Significant." And in the second paragraph, the author writes, "The word virus is very important when you name this pandemic." And then it states this: the historical definition for the Latin word virus means snake venom poisoning.